Hi and welcome to BookTube with Simon and Amy. This is going to be my October recent reads with everything spooky and dark and twisty that I've been reading. This is going to be quite a mixed wrap up. I feel like there are quite a few books here that I really didn't enjoy, so I apologise in advance for the ranting. But it's just of high standards, I think, when it comes to horror or when it comes to dark fantasy. I know what I enjoy and what I don't, and these books just weren't hitting the mark for me this month. So I read The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. I have to say in advance that I went into this one very apprehensive. I got an arc of All the Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. It was one of my most anticipated releases a few years ago. I was really buzzing for it, was super excited I got an arc, and I thoroughly hated it. I think I only rated it 1 star. It was shocking. I really didn't enjoy it. I felt there was no depth to the characters, felt like the story was very slow while also not being very dark. So this was a punt, but I was gifted this book, so I read it, and unfortunately this didn't work for me either. So this is, our main character is a mermaid, and essentially her mermaid babies have destroyed her world. They have eaten absolutely everything, and her and a plague doctor have left where they come from, and they are just like travelling to try and get to some sort of safety, some place that they can settle, and they form a relationship. Our main character doesn't communicate, but they find ways in which to communicate, and then they come across this wee encampment where kids are like killing each other and performing surgeries on each other, and they are led by these people called the Saints, and it's essentially about them just finding out who the Saints are, what's going on, and ultimately them looking for safety for her and her kids. I love a mermaid book. Mermaids are my thing, and so this is dark mermaids, which should have been like perfect for me. I also really like Plague Doctor Victorian Gothic style stuff, so again, right up my street. And I saw so many people talking about the gore in this book. I personally didn't find this gory, and I don't know if it's just because I do read quite extreme horror sometimes, that like my bar for gore is just very high, but I didn't find it that gory. I didn't even find it that dark and twisted, to be honest, and the writing was stupidly flowery. Like, she couldn't write a sentence but it needed to be 19 pages long with bloody 27 descriptors in it and 17 different uses. Like, you know that episode of Friends where Joey uses the thesaurus? That's what this was like. It's like she looked up every single word in a thesaurus. And I am not a huge fan of flowery writing anyway, but it doesn't bother me if the characters are interesting enough or the story is interesting enough that I am not focusing on the writing, but this just didn't have either. This really didn't grip me at all, and so it just made the fact that the writing was trying so hard to be pretentious AF just made it even more annoying for me. And I don't think that you need a degree in English to be able to write good horror, like, but Cassandra Khaw clearly thinks that you do, because like every other word needed to be bloody 19 letters long, and I just didn't think that there was a need for it. I think that she could have got her point across a lot better sometimes using simpler language, or just having the language be more detailed and less trying hard to be something that isn't. I'm not saying that you can't write Shakespearean level horror. I'm sure somebody has, and I'm sure it's brilliant, and I'm sure I would love it, but like the horror element still needs to be there, and this just didn't hit the spot for me. The horror elements weren't there. To be honest, the world wasn't even very well established. I mean, it's a really short book. I think that Cassandra Khaw probably can't write novels and should just stick to short stories, because I don't think that she's got enough imagination or longevity for a novel, if I'm perfectly honest. That's 2 I've tried now, and the 2 of them have been absolutely abysmal. So I will not pick up another Cassandra Khaw. Like, she could write a book that sounds so perfectly me, and I would be like, nah, because it's her that's wrote it. I just don't think I got on with her writing style whatsoever, and it's not really what I'm looking for a horror. I think that if you maybe aren't a horror reader and you either like classics or like high fantasy, then maybe Cassandra Clare would be for you if you're not really getting into it for the horror elements. But if I pick up a horror book, I want horror, which I think is fair, and I just never really get that fair. This is a 1 star for me. It was disappointing. I will be unhauling this because I pish. Next up was Mothered by Zoe Stage. So I have been really excited to pick this up. It's been on my shelf for a couple of years now. I have another book by this author on my wish list as well called Baby Teeth, and they were getting loads of hype. People were really enjoying Baby Teeth. I haven't heard as much hype about this, to be fair, but I have been waiting for a perfect opportunity to pick this up because I thought, you're really going to love it. It's getting hype. It's meant to be really dark and twisty, right up your street. So this essentially is about our main character Grace, and at the beginning of the pandemic, and her mum ends up moving in with her because she's struggling for money. She's a hairdresser. Obviously services and everything like that shut down within many industry, and so she's struggling to afford rent. So her mum comes to live with her, but her and her mum have a very tumultuous relationship, and you know, they just really didn't get on while she was growing up. So she's a wee bit on tenterhooks about it, but accepts that that's just what needs to happen so that they can both get through the pandemic. However, we find out for the blurb, this isn't a spoiler, that the police arrive at the house and her mum is dead, and she has done the murder. That's not a spoiler, and the book is just about how we get to that point, really. I never finished this book. This was a DNF for me. I did get quite a wee bit in, I think maybe just over 100 pages or something, maybe a bit more. But it just wasn't gripping me whatsoever. I like psychological horror. I think that it's really interesting. I really love books where no millions happens, but we're just focused on the characters. And so, like, this must have been really fucking boring for me to put it down, is what I'm trying to say. Because, like, basically nothing happens. It's a weird one. It goes very slow to 100 miles an hour super quickly. It just didn't hit that sweet spotty build up for me. Pretty much as soon as our mum moves in, we're already having some mental stuff happening. There was none of that like settling in period really for me. And while Gracie's mental health hadn't been great before her mum moved in, I didn't feel to the extent that we were at. And so I felt like I just wasn't really getting what we were promised. You know, we were promised this like psychological horror, and we're going to see how these two characters are rubbing each other up the wrong way. I thought it was maybe going to be a bit of Grace thinking like, has my mum done this, has my mum done that, and we would sort of spiral for there. But like early on we're having like mad like hallucinations, and like Grace not really knowing what's real life and not, and it just happened out of the blue. Like, it just wasn't very believable for me, and so I just didn't really buy into it. And the stuff that was happening as well, like it just was like, I don't believe that would happen, and so I just didn't buy into the characters, and I didn't buy into the relationship between them either. And we focus a lot on this is no really a spoiler, but slightly, Grace had a sister who had cerebral palsy, and we focus a lot on their relationship because that's why her and her mum's relationship was so strained, because Grace felt she had to do a lot of the mothering for her sister. I think hence the term mothered. But she felt like she never really got to be a kid because she had to be an adult to help with her sister, and her sister, we discover, wasn't exactly the nicest person, and I think it really messed her up to see her sister be this cruel mean-spirited, hurtful person and still get endless love and compassion because of her condition, and I think that really messed with her head and her view of the world a bit. But there was nothing hugely interesting about this. I didn't really care about Grace or her mum. I did in the beginning, and I did have high hopes for this. I was like geeking out with Simon about it when I was reading it early days, because I thought it was super interesting, but there was just so much build up to the mum actually moving in. And then when the mum moved in, we were already at like a 10 mental health wise, and it just didn't seem believable, and I didn't feel like there was anything that was really gripping me. I knew how it ended, I could see how things were going to play out, and I just didn't have it in me to finish the book. So this was a DNF. I didn't rate my DNFs, and this will be another unhaul because I'm never going to gravitate back to it. Next up, I read Grave Surprise by Charlene Harris. This isn't really a horror, but it is in the spookier category. I am reading this for part of my Charlene Harris read along that I'm hosting with Ange over at Angie's Bookish Chatter. She's on a hiatus at the minute, but I'll link her Discord down below for if you want to join us. We are currently halfway through the Harper Connolly series. Feel free to come along, catch up, dip into another series that we've read, and we'll chat with you about it. So this is the second book in a series, and I'm going to no, fuck it, I'm spoiling it. I feel like I can't really talk about this without getting some spoilers away. So our main character, Harper, is psychic. She got hit with lightning when she was a kid that allows her to speak to dead people and sort of sense their bodies, and so she gets hired a lot by the police and by families to try and search for people who have went missing or solve crimes if a family member has been, you know, suspected of committing a crime or whatever. They sort of get her in to help the police solve it, and I really enjoyed this one. I did end up enjoying more than the first one in the series. I felt like this one gave a lot more cosy vibes, more than the first one did, because Charlene Harris obviously writes cozy mysteries, in case you're unfamiliar, and I really liked this one. We end up revisiting an old case for Harper, and it's a case that she never was able to solve, and the body of that person rocks up and she's like, what's going on? And so she finally is able to put that case to bed, and I really did enjoy that because we get a lot of her reflections for previous work in the case, and then a lot of her reflections now, and I enjoyed that element of this book. I enjoyed Harper a lot more in this one. I found her a bit annoying in book one, I'm not going to lie to you. I did enjoy her more in this one, but there is a big spoiler that I'm going to need to give away to tell you something that I really bloody hate about Harper and this book series. So, proper spoiler warning now, to be clear. Harper in this book, she travels with her brother Tolliver, and we are hit right at the very beginning of this book, very much so, like, brother but not brother, wink wink. Like, they aren't blood related, but Harper's mum and Tolliver's dad, they got together and then they had like more kids together that are younger, but Harper and Tolliver aren't in any way blood related, but it is very much established in book one that they have a brother-sister dynamic, and he's there to protect her because these books are set in the south, and everybody in the south is okay with psychics and all things supernatural, and so sometimes things get a wee bit hairy and she needs to have that bit of backup. And they've spoke loads about like getting a house together and like living together, and you know, just having somewhere where they can call home, because they travel a lot obviously with the nature of the job, and so they always see a future together, but it has always very much been platonic until this book, where we are very heavily hit with "not my real brother" constantly. So you can totally see them getting together. By the end of this book, Harper has realised that she has feelings for Tolliver, and there's quite a lot of this book, it's just Harper and Tolliver avoiding how they feel and trying to make each other jealous, which just wasn't very interesting to read. Like, I was really interested in the case, and I really liked Harper a lot more in this book, bar those scenes, and so like they're getting together, right, which like gross. I just don't ship it, and I normally ship the romances in Charlene Harris's books. In True Blood, when we read all of them together, we all had different ships, but we shipped someday. And then it was the same, we read the library series, what was it, whoever she is, we read them, and again some of us had different ships, but we shipped someday. And like, I am not shipping a ship in this whatsoever. Like, there's no really other options other than Tolliver. She's went on a few dates during the books, but there's nobody where you're like, oh, like I could see her with him. I think because of the nature of the job, you know that she's not going to settle or stay anywhere, so like it really only is Tolliver, and like I do not ship it. I don't, like, I know they aren't blood related, but it still gives me a bit of the fucking ick. This was a 4-star for me. I still did enjoy loads of the other elements, I just don't think I'm going to enjoy the romance in this. So we'll see how we go with the rest of the series. Then I read Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. This has been another one that's been on my shelf for a good few years that I've been like, I can't wait to get to that, I can't wait to get to it, and I finally decided to pick it up. I've been on a right wee horror / dark fantasy kick for the last wee while with my reading, so I was like, let's just pick up something a bit twisty. So this is about Andrew Compton, who is a serial killer in the UK, and he manages to escape police custody, ends up in America where he teams up with another serial killer to take down the same target. The other serial killer is named Jay, and the both of them basically team up. They have somebody in mind and they form a real deep bonding connection because they feel like they really understand each other because they have a lot of the same proclivities, shall we say. I really enjoyed this one in the beginning. I thoroughly enjoyed Andrew's chapters. I thought Andrew was a great main character and I really enjoyed reading from his perspective. I didn't really enjoy reading from Jay's perspective, to be honest. I just felt he was very generic American serial killer, whereas I feel like Andrew Compton, I don't know if it's maybe just because he was for the UK, I related to him a wee bit more, and a lot of his personality was similar to some serial killers for the UK that I am maybe more familiar with, and so I just related to him. I thought he was really funny, and I thought he was a really interesting character to read from. And something that I didn't expect to get for this is we actually get chapters from the victim that they picked together. We get things from their perspective as well, and so we actually learn quite a lot about their life and about their ex-boyfriend as well, who's quite a prominent character in this, and I didn't really expect that, and I found it very interesting in the beginning. I really liked it because you got a real sense of who this person they were going to kill was, and you know for the blurb basically that's who they're going to pick, so you sort of have this like, oh, like a wee bit of an ache as you're reading about this person, knowing that they're ultimately going to meet their demise at the hands of these two mad serial killers. But I do feel like that bit of the book went on for far too long, to be honest, and I just didn't think that all the information that we got was necessary, like especially with the ex-boyfriend. Although I actually preferred them over, like as a character, over our victim, I just didn't feel like all the backstory was necessary. This is also set at the height of the AIDS pandemic as well, and I found that to be, it was interesting the way that things were being spoken about, and you know, both your serial killers are gay, both your victims are gay, and so like we're really in the heart of the queer community here, and we're watching the fear take hold, and so I enjoyed that element of the book, but I didn't feel like it merged particularly well with the fact it was a horror. I think that I really enjoy like things like that in my novels, and I think it is a period of history that, you know, no many people know enough about. It's not something that is portrayed enough, and you know, I think everybody got a wee bit of an education after It's a Sin was on telly, right? But like, it's something that I do enjoy reading about, and I think that is something that especially like being part of the queer community, we should know about and we should remember our history, and so it's no subject that I shy away from, but I just didn't think that it worked well in this. It was like an afterthought, and I don't think if you're going to have something as difficult a topic as that be in your novel, that it should be an afterthought. And I didn't enjoy this book by the end of it. The beginning of this book was like far superior to the ending of the book. I really enjoyed it. I think specifically because there was so much Andrew at the beginning, and then I feel like Andrew's chapters just get really washed down. If there was a book just about Andrew, I would read it. Like if Poppy Zebright came out with a book about Andrew Compton's heyday, like I would read. But I just didn't think that a lot of the detail in here was necessary. I will say that the gore was written very well, and I think that there is a lot of gruesome detailed scenes in here of trigger warnings for cannibalism and necrophilia, and I thought that they were written very well. I was going to say I enjoyed reading it, but you know, that sounds like a weird thing to say, but they were written very well. I had a fun time. But the language that was used in here made me pretty uncomfy, to be honest. I feel like we really use a lot of slurs in here that isn't necessary, and I appreciate that we're in the queer community at that time, and so, you know, phrases and names would have been used at that time. But I just feel like it didn't add anything to the story, like, and so I didn't feel like it was necessary to continue to use them. You know, Jay has a thing for young Asian boys and is forever called a rice queen, which I just don't feel like it's necessary. Like, if you want to use time specific language, then I feel like it should be used with a point, and it shouldn't be overused, whereas they were constantly just forever spitting these things out, and I didn't feel like it was necessary, and I felt like every time it would come up, like, it was just a bit jarring for me as a reader reading this modern day, like, because I didn't feel it was necessary, and I just feel like time's moved on, and so that did pull me out of this, and it lowered my enjoyment of the book overall for sure. Ultimately, this was a 3-star read for me. Pretty middle of the road. I did really enjoy Andrew as a character, and like I say, would love a book by him on his own. I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he was very funny, and I really enjoyed spending time in his dark wee twisted heat. But Jay was pretty boring. The rest of the characters were just okay, and the language really pulled it down for me, and I don't feel like we really got as big a payoff at the end as what we were promised, personally. So it was a 3-star for me, pretty middle of the road. Next up, I read Censor by Junji Ito. This is my first Junji Ito ever. I do have another one on my shelf I have smashed. I picked them up quite recently, and I was excited to pick one up, so I gave this one a go. So this is like an amalgamation, I feel, of different stories that all merge. It starts off, we've got your main character who walks into the forest on her own. She's on a wee hike, and this guy invites her to their local town, and there's like hair everywhere, everything's coated in hair, and it was prophesied that she would come. And then, like, the volcano erupts nearby, and it coats everything in here, and she's protected. Apparently everybody else dies, but she's protected by like a mass of golden hair. And then she acquires these powers, and like a cult tries to kidnap her, and then she gets freed for the cult, but the guy who frees her for the cult ends up becoming obsessed with her, and he like tries to find her and fix her, and then there's just a whack of stuff that happens in here, to be honest. It's quite a wild story. I had a fun time while I was reading this, to be honest. I liked the pictures in it. I thought that they were really cool, really detailed, gruesome at parts, which I really did enjoy. And horror manga was a new one for me. It's not really something that I've read before, and I did enjoy it. I think the only thing that let this down for me slightly is I feel like we didn't get a huge amount of answers, and so I think, like, if you're down for a bit of a wild ride and you don't need everything to be wrapped up, then like you might get on with this. better than I did. I did enjoy it, but I just felt like there were so many loose ends to wrap up, and I feel like I didn't really get that resolution at the end yet. But I suppose I need to bear in mind that it is manga, and you know, it isn't a horror novel, and so it is a different format, and maybe it's just that I am not used to reading in that format. But I did have a good time with it. There were bits of it that were creepy. I really did enjoy the characters in here. There were a couple of them that I was really rooting for, and I did feel like I got to know them. Maybe just not to the extent of how I would in a novel. But I did enjoy it. I rated it 5 stars. I think the only thing for me is it isn't particularly memorable. You know, I read it, I had fun at the time, but nothing really stuck out to me, nothing has stayed with me for finishing this book. And then I read A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Again, another one that's been on my shelf for a good few years. This got so much hype on BookTube back in the day when it was released. It is basically Dracula's Brides but sapphic, and if that's not a bit of me, I don't know what is. So it's been on my shelf again, just waiting for when I'm in the mood for a wee dark romance, dark fantasy, like this is going to be my guy. So I picked it up, and I have to say I was completely and utterly disappointed. This book is written as a letter from Dracula's first bride, Constanta, to Dracula, and it's basically her working through the shit show that was their relationship, and sort of figuring out how things ended the way that they ended. So it's like a bit of a retrospective for her on their relationship, and so we're finding out all these events years and years after they've happened for some of them. And I just don't think that the letter format really worked for me as a reader. Personally, I didn't care about anybody in this book. I didn't care about Constanta. I didn't care about the other 2 brides who come along. I didn't even really care about Dracula, which, like, weird because he's my main man. But this just was a flop, to be honest. I really didn't like it. I didn't care about anybody. I didn't really care about anything that was happening. I just thought that it was a really, really disappointing take on things. So there's like a trigger warning list at the beginning of this, which, like, I'm not here to dish trigger warnings, totally understand why they're there. But I just didn't feel that the trigger warning list was particularly accurate, none necessary. So it talks about emotional, verbal and physical intimate partner abuse, gaslighting, war, famine, plague, blood and gore, consensual sexual content, sadomasochism, self-harm, body horror, violence, murder, alcohol use, depression, mania, sexual assault, drug use and drowning. I don't know if it's just because, again, I do read pretty gruesome horror, and I love body horror. Like, it is one of my favourite things to read about. The grosser the better. I didn't feel like there was any body horror in this whatsoever. Like, the transformation of them becoming vampires is described, but like not in a huge amount of detail. Like, the process of them becoming as a vampire is described, and then it's basically just like, that was really fucking Sarah, and that's it. Like, where is the transformation, where is the body horror? Because like, I just wasn't getting it, other than the fact that they occasionally mention they don't like food like they used to. They can still eat food, it's just not the same. And like, the longer that they're a vampire, the less they desire food. But like, where was the body horror? Because it was fucking missing from my copy. Didn't know about you, but there was certainly none in here. In terms of the abuse and stuff, like, I don't know if this is going to make me sound like a horrendous person, but I didn't find Dracula to be that abusive. Like, do I think that he handled the polyamorous nature of his relationship with Constanta well? No, he totally manipulated her into adding other people into their relationship, and that obviously shouldn't happen, and it was 100% abusive. However, he had his study that he wanted to keep them out of because he was doing different things, and he had certain rules that they had to follow because they didn't want them to get caught for being vampires. I just feel like that's common sense. Like, I didn't feel like that was particularly abusive. And he did get a bit shouty and a bit ragey when they broke the rules. At one point he loses his ever-loving mind because they have like a huge party, and he's like, are you taking the piss? Like, folk are going to kill me your vampires if you're just bringing them back to the gaff all the time. And again, like, I didn't feel like that was particularly abusive. I just felt like he was like, can we just no have townspeople coming at us with pitchforks? I don't know, I just didn't feel like it was that necessary, if I'm honest. And I felt like it was just very mild compared to what the trigger warnings made it out to be. I feel like it made it out to be this really dark, twisty romance that was sapphic and poly and a bit horror, and it wasn't really any of that. Like, it was just a bit meh. Like, I wasn't getting what was sold to me, and I was disappointed. I cared about nobody. The only reason that I finished this and I didn't DNF was because I was like, surely the ending needs to make this worthwhile. And like, I do this thing where, like, if I'm not really feeling a book, I'll go through and I'll have a look at the Goodreads reviews, and that normally determines whether I've been at AF or no. If people are having the same issues as me, then I'm like, right, okay, this just isn't a me book, that's fine, I'll put it down. But everybody was loving this book. There was literally me and one other guy on Goodreads who fucking hated this. Like, and everybody else is like, inject this book into my veins, like, we'll never recover. Like, are we reading the same thing though? Because it just was shite for me. I hated it. It was a 1 star. Whack of shite. Then lastly, I read Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerry Maniscalco. This is on my I seriously need to finish this challenge as a series I wanted to start this year. I have the 4 books on my shelf, so I'm hoping to also continue. This is essentially our main character works with her uncle, who is like a mortician, and his uncle's assistant, and they decide that they're going to track down Jack the Ripper because there seems to be a familial connection to her, and she's like worried it's her dad, and so she needs to figure out what is going on. And her uncle ends up being fingered for being Jack the Ripper, and so she is put in a really sticky wicket where she needs to work with her uncle's assistant to try and prove that it wasn't her uncle, but in the process might be revealing that it's her dad. And it's obviously set in the height of Jack the Ripper's day, so Victorian times, where women are not really supposed to be interested in anything other than like putting on a pretty dress and marrying a husband. So she's quite peculiar, as it is pointed out constantly in the book 97,000 times. No like other girls. Constantly. But every other character on the page saying it about her, but every page that she's in where she has an internal monologue, I'm not like other girls. Oh, dull. Audrey Rose, our main character, in case you couldn't tell, is not like other girls of her time. She belabours the point constantly, and it really fucking got my goat. It really irritated me, and every single time she would say one of these "I'm no like other girls" lines, or would think it, or somebody else would say it to her, it just completely pulled me out of the book. Now I need you to know, right, I am obsessed with Jack the Ripper, right? Like, I am properly into true crime. Jack the Ripper's one of my favourite cases of all time. As part of my 30th birthday, Simon took me to London and he did like a whole host of things. One of the things he planned for me was like a Jack the Ripper tour where we went round all the murder sites. I'm not here to have a debate about whether or not you should be participating in true crime tourism. I had a fucking ball. It was class. Loved every minute of it. It was really well done. A fantastic tour. But like, that's how into Jack the Ripper I am. I love historical fiction when it is set in Victorian times, because the Victorians were a hyperfixation for me for a long period in my life, and not just because I love a corset. And so like, that environment and that atmosphere is just something I really am drawn to in a book. To be honest, I think I only really like historical fiction if it is in Victorian or like Regency times as of late. So when I tell you that I was disappointed in this book, like, you need to know how disappointed I was. I bought the entire series thinking that I was going to love it because it sounds right up my street. Like the rest of the series are new about Jack the Ripper, but it's about like Houdini and different things, and I love a book that merges stuff that actually happened. I think that that's just so cool, and it's a trope that I really, really enjoy. And so I thought that this series was going to be like so far up my street that I invested in the entire thing. I've got them all physically and I've got them all on Audible. That's how confident I was that I was going to love this, and I just didn't. There were elements of it that I really did enjoy. I liked the setting, I liked all the like old-fashioned sciencey tech, and I don't know how I feel about Audrey, right, because I really hated her for majority of the book. Like I really did, and I think that she is a terrible feminist. I think that she is super judgmental, and I think that the only way she feels good about herself is to tear down other women and be like, but I'm not like other girls, which I hate, I can't abide, and I just think it's so juvenile. But then by the end of the book, like, I think I was just at the point where I hated her that much that her irritation was amusing to me. I just find it quite funny. Like by the time we got to the end of the book and she was hitting out with her "I'm not like other girl" lines, I was like, what a bell end, like as opposed to being like seething about it. And so I don't think that I like her as a character, but like I think I am amused by her as a character. At this point is where I would say I finished. I didn't really ship the romance in here, to be honest. It was very easy to see how it was going to go, and it did go that way, and it was just pretty predictable. I didn't really care about much of the side characters in this. I didn't care about Audrey Rosie's dad. I did care about her brother and her uncle, but like it just wasn't great, and I feel like I enjoyed the ending as my issue, right? As I feel like for 90% of the book I was like, what the fuck is this shit? And then like the ending came and I was like, sold, boom, cool, loved it. And so I'm in a really weird position with it, and I didn't want to spoil the ending because it's literally the only good bit of the book. But I did enjoy the ending. I liked the way that it was wrapped up, and I think that I would continue this series at least into the next one to see if I enjoy that a wee bit more with it being a different case, and if I have the same issues with it then I don't think it's a series that I would continue. But I feel like the ending of this one has intrigued me enough that I would go into the next one, so this ended up being a 2-star read for me overall. So that is everything that I have been reading at the moment. I feel like this has just been a very sweary episode. Like if you were to do a drinking game every time I said something was piss or shite in this wrap up, I feel like you'd be steaming by now. But it's just been one of the ones. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying everything that you're reading at the moment. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.